I'm sure many of you are aware about many wars, atrocities, and other terrible things happening all over our globe present day. And today, we, the Young Voices of the North podcast, we are here to talk about two of such conflicts, namely the Israel-Palestine conflict and what's happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So how about we all start off by sharing a little bit of what we know before we get right into the conversation, sharing our opinions and trying to figure out, trying to look back, do some historiology, try to look back at what happened in the past and how the past is affecting our present day and what we can do to help people, talk about what's going on social media, talk about what you as a person can do to help people in these situations, and maybe even give some predictions about what we think is going to happen next. So let's get right into it. So how about we start with the Israel-Palestine conflict?
Okay, yeah, so what I understand is, so after World War II, like the Holocaust and everything, a lot of Jewish people from Europe later moved to kind of like the area that it's now like present-day Israel and Palestine, but originally it was like mostly Palestinians, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened was, so they were going to share the land, but instead of kind of making it more equal or equitable, I should say, it seemed that the Jewish people were given more. Do you guys know anything about that?
Yeah, it seems that after the events of the Holocaust, pretty much everyone in like the West or in Europe and everywhere pretty much came to the general consensus that after all this time of being persecuted, the Jewish people needed their own land, so that their own place where they could stay so that they could avoid oppression. And they decided to give them the land of Palestine to call their home, which if you go back and look at the Bible and stuff like that, you can see that that's a place where like thousands of years ago they used to live originally. Well, it's like the Bible's really complicated. We know that even before they got there were other like the Canaanites and people living there, but that's where they decided to go after the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm. And I know you were talking about this before we were recording, we were discussing it. How much of the land did the Jewish people get?
The Jewish got about 55% of the land belonging to the Palestinians.
Yeah, because the UN decided to give it to them.
Right.
Even though before the UN decided to give them that 55%, they only owned 6% of the land.
Yeah, but that's because their population was a lot smaller.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure back then the Jews only made up like 30% of the population. And even that 30% was due to mass immigration. Mm-hmm. Like Jewish people from all over the globe suddenly coming to go converge in Palestine. Mm-hmm. And even after all that, they only made up 30%. So then that really makes you wonder why the UN, instead of dividing it equally, like, you guys make up 30% of the population, you can have 30% of the land.
Yeah.
They decided to give them the majority.
Yeah. Yeah. And then from what it seems, eventually, like, it did become Israel, and they became, like, a very powerful country and everything. But then Palestinians, of course, they weren't like fully like on board with this, because it's like over half of their land was being given to other people, right?
So they rejected it.
Yeah, but they couldn't defend themselves, right? Because they don't have a very strong army, and that's kind of what's happening now over specifically that Gaza Strip there, is the conflict over who should own it.
Yeah, and even today, like the Palestinians don't have like an established government almost like that, because even before the events of the Holocaust, they were under oppression even before the Holocaust and even before the Jews started coming to Palestine. So they didn't even have a government back then, and they didn't have a military or any sort of power really like that they could use to stop that.
And back then, this was why the Palestinian Arabs reached out for help with the British, like Great Britain, That's where the Hussein McMahon correspondence comes in. This was a series of letters traded between Hussein ibn Ali and Sir Henry McMahon. So generally, the correspondence stated that in exchange for bringing down the Ottoman Empire, the British would help Palestine become more independent and like have better government and resources and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was way before, like, that was like after World War One, right?
Yeah, around 1915.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they've been powerless for a really, really long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now they're in such a vulnerable state right now with what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
which is why we have, like, something we see often throughout history is whenever there are conflicts such as these, there are obviously extremists on both ends of the, like, on both sides of the fence. And in this case, it's the Hamas from Palestine. So, but I think what a lot of people are kind of not understanding is that, yes, you have that extremist group who are doing bad things, to Israel. But when Israel's kind of like defending themselves, they are harming a lot more innocent people.
Yeah.
There's a lot more like deaths on the Palestinian side than there was even initially in the Israel side.
Yeah. Like, and I guess now we're talking about present day, what's happening right now while we're here sitting down recording this episode. There are kids in Palestine being targeted by AI-trained shooter guns. Have you seen those?
I have not heard of
like
that.
The Israelis started setting up like these automatic rifle. I don't even know what to call them really. That they use AI to train to shoot people. And right now, people are saying that the people in Gaza are in an open-air prison. And I think that's very true because before coming here, obviously, to talk about this, I did a lot of research and just looking at the small coverage we can get from Gaza, it's devastating what's happening to them. I saw a video of over 100 people living in a school building, not enough food to eat, living in tents, and not even tents like the tents you go to the, I don't know, Canadian Tire and buy to go camping. They're just like made out of bed sheets that they're using, don't even cover the rain or anything, just to block the wind so that they can have somewhere to live because their homes have been blown up. And that's, I remember in elementary school, I was so naive in elementary because I remember one time in elementary school thinking, wow, we're so lucky to be living in this era. I used to legitimately believe that there were no wars going on in the world.
No, but I feel like that's how they kind of paint it out to seem, but really there are no wars going on here.
Exactly. Like, I used to think, wow, people back in the olden days were so stupid. What are they doing, having wars and stuff? But then you realize that they're still happening present day. Like, how come we as the human species cannot just put our differences aside? Like, why are we still having wars? And even then, I can't even think of it like that because the wars are so complicated. People's motivations are so complicated. And I remember back then I used to believe that it was just black and white, that it was simply don't fight or whatever like that. But really, the situations all over the place are extremely complicated. And whereas to some people they may be like, oh, this is black and white, nothing really is black and white like that. That's something I really didn't understand. I was just a little kid, but I used to think that wars were simply unnecessary, and wars aren't necessary. I'm not trying to excuse wars, but like, they're so complicated and stuff. And I kind of just wish that the people who are starting wars and the people who are fighting in wars would stop thinking about it as shooting down the enemy and instead start thinking about it as shooting down a human being, you know? Like, I did not explain that right at all, but
No, you just wish there was more of like sympathy for
yeah.
the other people. But the thing with wars, for the most part, is so it's just a disagreement between two governments, but then it's all the civilians who pay for it in the end.
Yeah.
So like with this, it's like between, you know, the Israeli government and like the Palestinian government. But with this, all the people who are being hurt in the end, they aren't the government officials. It's the people on both sides.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. So this is something that's very, very... It's a dry pill to swallow, especially since being, like, so far away, and then, like, we're all just kind of, like, teens and everything. It feels like we can't really help them.
Yeah.
But there are some things that I've seen, like, for example, on TikTok, a lot of filters, like, they have, like, a watermelon theme to them. I don't know why specifically a watermelon. But everything, like, they raise money, and all the proceeds go to helping out Palestine, because they're the ones who are the most vulnerable right now and everything.
I used some of those.
Mm-hmm. Me as well. Have any, Owen or Chisam, have you guys used any?
Yeah. I don't really use TikTok right now.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's one way. If like you, the listeners, are thinking of a way, if you have TikTok, you can use that. There's also a song. It's called like, I'm gonna butcher this pronunciation, but Yemenaya or Yemenia. It's like Yemanya, and it's by the creator Salty Licorice. And all the proceeds like from using that sound are also being donated to help the Palestinians and people in the Gaza Strip.
There was a petition. I signed it that pretty much was asking the Canadian government to send humanitarian aid to Palestine.
It's the House of Commons petition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But another thing that a lot of people can do are boycotts. Of two big examples I've seen are Starbucks and McDonald's. Like, obviously, this is something that's a personal choice, but if you're looking for something else to do, there's also that as well.
Yeah.
So why boycott those places specifically?
Because they donate.
Like, when I did research, I saw that McDonald's gives like free food to Israeli troops, and that sparked a lot of controversy because it's like, well, we know who's like the most vulnerable in this situation, and it'd make more sense for them
The
to get those things.
Palestinians don't even have food.
Exactly. Yeah, there are a lot of others, like, I didn't research the full list, but a lot of other things. Obviously, that's also controversial, because in the end, we all are probably going to use something that supports the side that we're not necessarily on, but they're just kind of like ideas or things that I've seen that people suggest that we should do.
Also, there are protests and stuff going on. I know some people like don't like protesting and stuff, or think it's dangerous, because protesting can be dangerous. Like, we've seen a bunch of protests gone wrong if you've been on the internet. And donating to charities and stuff like that can help. But also just showing your support also does a big thing, I think. Because I don't remember, I wasn't alive back then, but I remember researching about what happened a while ago, like in the US. Oh, this is a whole other thing we have to talk about why I saw a graph showing how your age corresponds to which side you're on, kind of. And how younger people are more likely to support the Palestinians and stuff like that. And the reasoning behind that being the media, like the news, back then, like at the end of the World War II.
It's because the media back then was way more controlled than it is now. And there is more, like, government trying to, like, force a certain narrative. And it was more successful because the technology back then obviously was less developed, less broad. So there's only a certain amount of things that you can actually consume. And it was probably being, like, held by the government. Whereas now, with, like, more advanced internet and, like, more opportunities to research, and just like people nowadays have a way more open mind than people who are older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that is also, I learned this recently, the reason why younger people are more open-minded is because your brain is physically softer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is physically easier to change your mindset when you're younger.
Yeah.
That's
And
true.
another thing is also that there are a lot of there's like this saying that there are no new things under the sun. Back then, a lot of Americans, like America used to be extremely pro-Israel because they used to draw parallels between the two countries, and they used to see Israel as like they used to like Americanize it, you know. And kind of similar to how it's kind of like the indigenous peoples we have in Canada and in the USA. But the difference is that we had us sitting around this table, we had no control over residential schools and stuff like that. And we had no control over what happened to the indigenous peoples back then. But today, what's happening to the Palestinians, we do have control over. I mean, we're just teenagers, but we're alive right now, and we can still do something about it before they get erased. Because a few generations down the line, people are going to look back at this, and they're going to be like, well, why didn't my ancestors do anything about this? Because back when residential schools were happening, everyone was okay with it. And it's not, and now we can all agree that residential schools were terrible. But back then, people thought it was okay, and it was perfectly acceptable. And remember when we did that? Remember when we were talking about Thanksgiving and stuff like that? Like, it's like indigenous culture has almost been erased.
And that's kind of what's happening to the Palestinians right now.
Yeah. But we can still do something about it because they're still alive, they're still present, and we still have the opportunity to do something about it today. But if we wait a few years down the line, it's going to be too late.
I don't even think years, just months at this point.
Yeah.
And what things are looking like.
I have a question then. Although none of us here had direct say in residential schools and colonization happening, we do clearly still benefit from the fact that it happened every single day. So if the indigenous people decided one day they wanted to force us back overseas, what would you guys do?
That's actually
an interesting question. Well, here's the thing. The way I see it, so I see that like you're correlating that to, you know, kind of like what's happening in Israel and that idea. I don't think, well, I should say this is how I see it. I don't know, like, for sure. But I don't think the Palestinians want them gone. They just want things to be more equitable.
Yeah.
Right? Because before they were like sharing the land. Because I feel like if things were being shared properly, it's fine. But now we have one side kind of trying to take over everything, which is what it shouldn't be. Like, especially that area, it's like, I don't know, I feel like you're in those kinds of religions. It's kind of like the Holy Land too. We got Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people. Like, that's kind of like is a shared land, like throughout history of those cultures. And now that's kind of happening now, but it's not being shared properly.
Yeah.
Because then when you look at it that way, when you're talking about if we were forced back overseas, well, it makes me first of all think of like the African Americans. They don't even know where they're supposed to go, right? Because all that was lost. So like, where does that go? But then you hear about movements of like land back, which I think is totally okay. But I would just hope it also be like the same thing where it's like we find ways to share things properly and equitably and not kind of repeat what has already happened where people are forced out of a place, especially now that it would be really complicated when it comes to
which I think that also brings up the point that one of the biggest problems is that even in Canada, the land isn't shared.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
you can kind of
like
that as well.
Most countries actually have a very bad history, and I feel like North American countries like Canada and the USA have like really bad histories, but I feel like we still need to find a way to fix it. Like, I know we have Truth and Reconciliation Day and stuff like that, but I feel like we still need to try harder to make things more even.
Yeah, 100%.
Which actually, a few smaller things have been happening. Certain bands are getting compensation for the fact that the cows and plows parts of their treaty had not been met because they haven't been receiving cows and plows. So I know some people, they said they're getting about 40,000 for that. And then also with the foster system OASIS, there was a conference recently where they're setting up a class action where I believe it was that if a child gets taken out of their home, they can't be permanently removed from their home. Like, after a certain amount of time, or they just can't be taken out of their home at all.
For
So
everyone?
they get put back in.
Like, for everyone or for the
I
indigenous
believe that agency is primarily handles indigenous families.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Because that would be exactly like how it used to happen
Yeah.
a while ago. But that's another thing, like, drawing these parallels between, like, Canada, America, and Palestine. It's, like, extremely similar. It's, like, kind of history repeating itself. But the difference is that it hasn't happened yet, kind of. Like,
Yeah.
we're in the middle of it. We're in the thick of it. And we can still change something if the governments of this world would just open up their eyes. There's still something we can do. But soon it'll be history, kind of, and there won't be anything we can do because, unfortunately, time machines don't exist.
And
So
the main thing is corruption. Because when you think about it, if, like the palace, okay, historically, Britain wanted to colonize Palestine, but they couldn't. They didn't have access to it. So if you think about it, these governments would not benefit anything from helping Palestine. And that is mostly the reason why, like, you actually see these things happening, because the U.S., like, they have the power to change these things, but they won't because it doesn't benefit them. Like, only a few days ago, there was this vote for, like, a ceasefire, to, like, stop for a ceasefire. But there were 3 countries. The U.S. voted against the ceasefire, and then didn't. UK abstained. They didn't. They said they were neutral. While almost all the other countries said that they wanted the ceasefire. And just because of those 3 countries, now these things just keep going because it doesn't benefit them. Because there's no, like, purpose.
and it positively benefits them
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, which is
Like-
sad. It's kind of sad to see that, like, us as a society, we look first for, like, benefits in helping someone rather than just seeing, oh, this is really bad, we should put a stop to this. It's kind of like there's always a what's in it for us kind of thing. And I find that really appalling, actually. Like, we say all these things like, oh yeah, we love all people, it doesn't matter where they're from, everyone should, oh yeah, like, we have all these rights and everything that everyone should have, and then it's like, oh, well, these people's rights are being abused or taken away. It's like, okay, but do I have to do something about it now? This, that. It's like people are afraid of, like, kind of, like, standing up for what's right or helping people because they know that it will create enemies with other people, even though what those people are doing is wrong, and they should kind of say, like, what you're doing is wrong.
And the thing is, people fail to put themselves in other people's shoes. Like, imagine you were the one who your mom just got shot down and stuff like that. You wouldn't want that to happen, and you would want to help yourself in that situation. So if you really think about it, there shouldn't be need for all these things, because if you know that you wouldn't like to be in that situation, why not just prevent it altogether instead of thinking about how it can benefit you and how it can benefit you. Yeah, that's it. So, moving along, we're going to be talking about the stuff that's been happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo and how that affects us as a people.
So to start off, what's happening right now in Congo is a genocide. Like, when I was doing research, I read that like 6.9 million people are being displaced, and the situation is so bad that a man even set himself on fire, and he was holding a sign that said "Stop the genocide in Congo" to hopefully bring attention to the world. So what's going on is that Congo has a lot of rich natural resources, one of the main ones being cobalt, which is actually used in lithium batteries, which we use in like our phones, computers, cars, and everything. But instead of these being mined like ethically, civilians are being forced into these mines without proper protection, without adequate pay to get these resources that we use and even we're currently using and all that. So I just want to know, what do you guys know about the Congo? How does it make you feel, etc.? So I can start off. I think it's so sad that this is happening and that a lot of people don't know about it and it's not being talked about. And I feel like it's because when we talk about this, so we're talking about the cobalt mostly used for all of our tech and everything, and all across the globe we literally depend on technology and all that, and doing this would criticize tech companies, obviously.
And it would make people feel guilty.
Exactly. And people don't like feeling guilty kind of thing.
So they'll just close their ears and not post about it or anything.
Exactly. But that shouldn't be the case. Like, yes, we are all using that right now. That's probably unethically obtained. But we are right here acknowledging that we are aware of that, and we're going to do everything we can to hopefully make a change.
Yeah.
Right?
So Congo is actually, despite having like 70% of the world's cobalt, one of the poorest countries in the entire globe, which makes absolutely no sense. That's like, Africa is one of the richest continents in the world, like when it comes to having resources.
But we are the poorest economically.
Exactly. And that is because of just being like stolen from, pretty much. Like inadequate pay and stuff like that.
And the thing is, once again, going back to not benefiting the like major people, whenever any like ruler has tried to improve like Africa, they have just died
Or disappeared.
Yeah.
I've noticed that too.
I forgot his name, but there was this ruler. I think he was he in the Congo? I think he was the president, and then he tried to like actually help the economy, and then this healthy man died of a heart attack, like just randomly. And then there's also been cases where they've actually been openly like assassinated by Western like what's the like organizations, just because they've tried to like increase like Africa's like economy and stuff like that. And it's really sad when you see people trying to like help themselves because it doesn't benefit them, they don't want it happening, you know? Because if Africa actually starts to realize just how much power they hold over like the world and how they can like actually change things, they don't want that happening, because once again, it doesn't benefit them.
And we've been suppressed for so many years that if suddenly we were like at the like quote unquote like same level as the rest of everyone, they'd realize that they can't control us anymore. We can't be getting all of our like cheap labor, like, you know, like how certain like organizations have things made in those countries because they know they can just pay them like nothing at all, basically. Or they won't be able to obtain certain things, like for example like chocolate, like getting cocoa those like farmers make like nothing. But then you have all these huge chocolate companies in like Europe and the US and everything in North America. But if we were to actually say, no, you're going to pay us for what you're taking, like the proper thing, because chocolate's expensive, right? Then they'd realize, oh, maybe we're, like the other countries, aren't as rich anymore because they're actually paying what they owe.
Yeah. The thing is, like, if Africa were to realize, like, how powerful they are, the entire world would actually be at their mercy. But instead of that happening, you can just see them being at the mercy of the rest of the world.
Yeah, I do think that they know like how powerful they can be, and it's just because of corruption, right?
Which is why they try to silence these leaders who are actually trying
Not
to
corrupt. Yeah.
Yeah. Like right now in Congo with the cobalt mines, most of the companies, I'm pretty sure, are Chinese owned. And they know that, well, you know, getting things from China is really cheap, isn't it? Like business owners and everything, like getting things from China seems really, really cheap. And you try to figure out why. And then you realize it's because of maltreatment and workhouses and pretty
how,
much
like, child
daylight
labor
robbery.
and stuff like that.
Yeah. Like, there are so many children dying in Congo because they're made by their parents to help them mine for some cobalt. Because if they don't mine cobalt, they're not going to eat that night.
Yeah. And even though they do this, there's no guarantee they're going to get anything out of it as well.
Yeah.
Right?
And like I was saying, the world being at Africa's mercy if Africa were to open its eyes, like, if Apple and Microsoft and Samsung, if all those places were to suddenly decide that, no, we're only going to buy ethically obtained cobalt, then that would run up the price all the way up, and they know that that wouldn't be profitable for them.
Yeah.
Which is why they won't do anything, because they're too busy thinking about
Money.
Yeah, to think about the people who are being killed to get that money.
And what's even worse is kind of like the fact that other African nations are also enforcing this, because when I was doing research, I saw that like the West, I believe it's the West, is like funding, for example, like giving funding to like Rwanda and Uganda to kind of keep them in control in that eastern region of Congo. And it's sad because these things happen to like those countries and stuff too, right? But now they're just continuing that, what is it, that quote unquote trend, I can't think of the word, but they're kind of continuing that, and it's sad. But one thing I also was kind of thinking about is because I'm also half Ugandan, right? And they're doing these things to the Congolese, right? Because of corrupt government, and then telling their army, go do this, whatever. And I think that's appalling, but it kind of makes me think how we're just talking about like Israel and Palestine and all that, and how some people maybe stand in solidarity more with Israel because, like, you know, that's like their heritage
Or religion.
or their culture, whatever. And they don't always necessarily acknowledge, like some people do, but some aren't acknowledging that, yeah, but what their government is doing is wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas with me, I love my heritage, but I fully am acknowledging that what my country's government is doing is totally wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
The thing is, this was before I deleted TikTok, but I was watching a TikTok about where they were showing, I know we're talking about Congo right now, but this ties in. They were showing some stuff happening in Palestine. And then the number one comment on that post was someone saying, yeah, I know what's happening to the Palestinians is bad, but the Israelites are God's chosen people, so I'll still keep defending them. Like, your religion shouldn't, like, make you disregard war crimes, you know? And just because you're from a certain country, or just because you work at Apple, doesn't mean you need to support what's happening in Congo, okay?
Yeah.
So what exactly is killing people? Is it the bad work conditions, the not enough money to live, or is there someone like a military going down there,
All
and
of them.
in person killing people?
It's
All of them.
everything.
Both.
There's also health concerns.
Mm-hmm.
There's no safety gear in a bunch of places.
Yeah.
Children are being forced to work.
Yeah.
There's people being
Murdered.
killed, beat up,
Yeah. There's
assaulted.
looting happening and kidnapping, like everything.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then, why is the military being sent down there? What is their goal?
To support the mining companies.
Because they're getting funding to do this, and obviously corrupt governments, right? So they want all that money, and it's probably also like an alliance thing, right? They're probably like, oh, if we go back, then we can say we helped you this one time. So
It's
Right.
like the work conditions are so bad that people are dying, so they
Yeah.
want to stop working there.
Mm-hmm.
But then the mining companies are getting the military to pretty much go down there with a gun to them,
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
be like, keep working.
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. It's sad. There's nothing they can do. It's like
Mm-hmm.
they stop working, well, they're gonna die of either starvation or they're gonna get beat to death. Or if they keep working, they're like inhaling all those toxins and like dust and everything in the air. So then they're gonna die of health problems too.
Yeah.
It's like they're stuck,
Mm-hmm.
and like not enough is being done by like people, like countries with power and everything, to like, you know, say something and be like, what's going on here is not okay.
Mm-hmm. And like, it's almost as if the mining companies are above the law. Because here's this one specific example where 2 kids went to the mines and there was a cave in and they died. And according to the Congolese law, the Chinese company that was in control of that mine should have put a fence around it or something to stop kids from getting in. And after that happened, the mining company should have taken responsibility, apologized to the family, and been like, sorry, we should have had some security guards, we should have had a fence, we should have done something. But they didn't do that. And according to the law, there should have been consequences, but there weren't any consequences at all. And the reason that the companies aren't putting up fences or anything is because they're also benefiting a lot from artisanal mining, which is also illegal according to Congolese law. And in case you don't know, artisanal mining is when someone goes to the mine, like illegally, like they break onto the property, get some of the cobalt, and then leave, and then go sell it back to the company that they stole it from. So pretty much mining and then selling it, which is illegal, but the company is perfectly okay with that, and they keep buying it. And 10 to 30% of the company's profits is actually from artisanal mining. And the law should stop them from allowing that to happen, but it doesn't, because it's almost as if the companies are above the law, like the government has some sort of agreement with the companies or some sort of alliance.
Yeah, I feel like that happens globally, like everywhere, like almost every country, even the ones who seem like, you know, at peace, everything's, you know, like sunshine and rainbows. You always have like big companies who seem to do things as if they are above the law.
Yeah.
It's just in this case, the consequences of that are kind of more out there. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but it's more, I don't want to say more severe, because there are bad things happening in other places, but it's like more severe, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And it's almost like there's something I heard when someone said that laws are only made for poor people.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah. Because if you're a rich, multi-billion-dollar company,
You're untouchable.
yeah, and you can even do tax evasion and stuff without having any consequences. So as long as you're supporting the economy, good enough.
Okay, and now moving forward from this, I do have like some calls to action we can do. So just like how we mentioned with Palestine, there are also like TikTok filters, and all the proceeds are being donated. There's also a sound you can use. It's called Abusing Me by Yana the artist, and this creator says that all the proceeds are being donated to friendsofthecongo.org. Then on top of this, there's of course also like, you know, boycotting. Obviously that's a little more difficult, boycotting like a tech company, considering we depend on it in our everyday lives. So with that, just make sure like, you know, you acknowledge that what you're getting, it wasn't necessarily manufactured completely ethically.
Yeah.
And And also, I feel it's important to make sure you use these things properly. It's kind of like, for example, when you think of like food waste and stuff, and the people who like probably didn't get paid anything for it, but you throw it out. That's not like no one's telling you stop eating because it wasn't obtained ethically, but they're saying appreciate what you have, and it's the same thing with these. So anything you have, so like, you know, your car, your phone, your laptops, make sure like, you know, you're using them well, using them properly, so then the people who suffered for this product to be made didn't die for nothing, kind of thing.
Yeah, like if you can resell one of your electronic devices, you should do that. Or whenever you're buying a new phone, if there's ever a trade-in option. Actually, I once tried trading in a phone and they like pretty much scammed me.
Oh, lovely.
But like, if you can do a trade-in without getting completely scammed, then you should try doing that, because then they can maybe reuse some of the materials that were unethically obtained, and that means one less phone that they have to get all new materials for, and one less, well, I would like to say one less person, but can't really hope for that much, can we?
Just show appreciation for what you have, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and with that, I think that's kind of everything. We touched on a lot today. So this podcast, there was myself, Nemirambe, and we also had Eniola, Chisamebi, and Owen. And with this, what we would like all of you listeners to take away from it is just, we just want to spread awareness. Hopefully you yourselves also go out, search some things up, and figure out ways on how you can also support these people in need. And that's the end of another episode of the Young Voices of the North.